Well, it hasn't been too long since the last one of these. Welcome back again, friends, strangers, and enemies. Tonight we are going to be looking at the figure Obscura series Red Death from company Four Horsemen Studios. Based around the 1842 short story by Edgar Allan Poe, which centered on a prince named Prospero, who is protecting the upper-class subjects from the scourge of an illness known as the Red Death, which is laying waste to everything in its path outside the castle walls, while the peasants and everyone else are left to their own devices. But as they all celebrate within the walls, the personification of the disease makes its way inside and kills the partygoers and the prince indiscriminately. The story had many references and adaptations throughout the years. One most notable is the 1964 film of the same name, starring Vincent Price. Though the film was only loosely based on Poe's source material, it's still worth the watch. Will we take a look at that film in the future on this channel? Maybe. But for the time being, my friends, strangers, and enemies, let's take a look at this figurine. First things first, we're going to check out the box. Pretty cool blood-dripping font that we have here above the Four Horsemen Studios logo. And above that, we have the Red Death itself personified, looking very much like one of those blind Templars from another franchise that I think I mentioned in the past. An image that expands across the spine and onto the back of the box. Actually, we can fold this open to show off the whole thing, as it's only the outer casing of the box which houses the figurine. On the left-hand side, we have a synopsis of the short story. I won't bother reading this since I already covered it in my introduction. Speaking of the short story, they also included an illustrated booklet which has the story in its entirety. The art, in which of course is also adorning the box. On the flip side of this outer casing is actually a backdrop for the figurine in question, intended to be used as a set piece for the figurine. I'm not sure how common this is for figurines still, but the last time that I saw something similar to this was the Tower Records Alice promotional figures. Of course, the backgrounds for those were more paper-like, whereas this one is made of a more durable cardboard. And the binding didn't unfold like this one. The background is illustrated with depictions of Prospero and his partygoers dancing among themselves in 7 rooms which were detailed in the story. And on the box that houses the figurine itself, we have the same text from the cover, void of its dripping blood. And inside, we can see the Red Death in all of its glory alongside an ebony clock accessory, something that was also featured in the story. And on the sides and the back of the box show the branding on the tops. The left-hand side of the box shows a candelabra in the foreground, with partygoers in the background, whereas on the right-hand side, it shows a ballroom with deceased partygoers. The back of the box shows Prospero's castle sitting atop a hill while the bodies of the Red Death's victims are being carted away by a plague doctor. You know, I was toying with the notion of putting John Cleese's bubonic plague discussion in Faulty Towers as a lead into this video, but then I realized that the bubonic plague actually had zero connection to the Red Death. The disease is actually inspired by tuberculosis. The only similarities being the name Death and a color being associated with the disease. And even at this point in the video, the joke may be too far gone since I had to explain it. But after seeing this guy carting off the dead bodies, I kinda want to do this.
Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead!
Right, good bit. Now onto the figurine itself. So the first thing I find when I open the box is this little sheet of paper giving me a warning, which I could have used for one of the NECA Predator figurines I acquired in the past. The sheet warns you to be careful with the figurine's joints when first posing it, especially when the weather is cold. Gotta give props to the creators that they would want to give a disclaimer like this to their customers and avoid angry reviews from people destroying their own merchandise. As for the figurine itself, we have a crimson-clad creature with the physical traits of a zombie or a skeleton. And while these garments can be removed, I have no intention of demonstrating that. Few things I will show, however, is that this hood and these clothes appear to have some sort of thin metal inserts embedded in the material, which allows the cloak to be twisted and manipulated. And also, his mask can be removed to reveal a half-hollowed skull head? Sure. Yeah, this is kind of a weird design choice. You leave the lower jaw intact and hollow out the front of the skull for what reason? I think there are better ways to emphasize the non-corporeal essence of the Red Death than doing something like this. The figurine also comes with interchangeable hands, which is kinda weird. Typically, you will see this kind of thing for figurines that have multiple accessories, but beyond the ebony clock, we only have Prospero's dagger and this base of blood. Oh, okay, so all these alternate hands have gaps in them for the dagger. For some reason, the Red Death never made use of this weapon in the story, so I don't understand why it has this feature, or why the dagger was included at all for that matter. For the remaining two accessories, they are actually one and the same. This bloody base connects to the clock, here with the pegs, but personally speaking, since I don't trust this thing to stand too long on its own merit, I think I would rather use these pegs for the Red Death instead, and just let the clock sit on it like this. The ebony clock itself is crafted beautifully here, but it also has one of the biggest flaws as well. You will notice that this glass panel in front can be removed. Why it doesn't have hinges is a mystery to me, and honestly, the fact that it can be removed at all makes me question the artist's decision. You would think, oh, okay, maybe you could just swing the pendulum or play with the clock hands, but no. Those are all in fixed positions. So it's really just a useless feature. And you also run into the risk of having this issue with the prop. Some of these pegs are very loose, and the front of the clock will not close all the way. Appearance-wise, the clock looks good, but the craftsmanship for the feature here is pretty shoddy. The ornament on top of the clock is a raven, which is also a nod to one of Poe's works. Don't ask me what that ornament is on the bottom, though, because I have no idea. And that's pretty much all I have to cover on this. Aesthetically, the figurine and its accessories are gorgeous. Most of the stuff that I had to critique here are a few minor nitpicks about my personal preference. Biggest flaw is still the panel and the clock, but this could be a one-off thing. Maybe one of these days we can get around to the Vincent Price version of the figurine, if I can ever find one. It's been quite the challenge. But anyway, here ends the review. Keep tuning in and keep your eyes open. There's no telling when the next project can come up. Maybe one of these days we'll learn the concept of consistency as well. Until next time.